Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Father-Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Tommy. I'm one of your hosts, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, my dad, Matt. Dad, I think we know how you're doing, but how are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as bad off as I had been after the playoff losses, mostly because, Dennis Green, they are who we thought they were. Yep. This is basically who they were all season.
I was going to say, that it's not like...
So this wasn't quite as crushing. It was just like, I was a little frustrated with the game at certain times, but my reaction to it, I was like, of course it's going to happen.
Exactly.
Right? That's how I felt during a lot of the game. And, though I will admit, we had a brief start, we had to restart, and then we went on a little 10-minute tirade. We were on the verge of starting before we started up again.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about in this game, but in case you were living under a rock this weekend, the Packers lose 22-10.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Packers lose 22-10 to the Eagles in the wild card round. Probably not quite as close as that score would maybe indicate. Packers season is done. I'm less upset.
I would say it was as close as that score indicated.
We'll talk. We'll have plenty to talk about over the course of this hour. But I would say, it went how the season went. It was in many ways a microcosm of Green Bay's season. I'm less upset about the game itself and more just a little bit sad that we're not going to get to watch the Packers until September of next year. But we'll have a lot to talk about until then. We still got free agency. We still got the draft. We still got several coaching changes. And so before we get into anything about this game against the Eagles, what, made us mad, what we think Green Bay could have done better, whether or not there was an avenue to winning this game that maybe they just didn't take, just wanted to pitch a couple of things. We will be doing episodes for the entire offseason. We're going to switch from doing 2 a week to 1 a week, but we'll be talking all about, a bit of a post-mortem on the season, what went right, what went wrong, what needs to change for next year and going into 2025. And I think both of us are very excited about 2025. We're going to be talking a lot about the draft. We're going to be talking a lot about, coaching moves. We're going to be talking a lot about, offseason OTAs, training camp, et cetera, et cetera. So if
free agency, Senior Bowl, everything draft related, the combine. So if you're someone who likes following the Packers year round and likes the draft and likes free agency and likes all the team building aspects, which I think for me are the most fun, exciting parts, feel free to stick around. We're still going to be doing an episode every week. Make sure to, subscribe, follow, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, so you get notifications when, new episodes come out. Give us a follow on Twitter or Blue Sky at FatherSonPacker for other updates on when episodes come out, other updates on roster moves, free agency, et cetera, one-stop shop and everything, Titletown, content from other Packers content creators. Once again, that's at FatherSonPacker on both Blue Sky and Twitter. So check those out. Feel free to stick with us throughout the offseason as we talk about what's coming up in 2025. I know the end of this season was probably not very good, to say the least, but I'm still really excited for next season. I think there are a lot of great building blocks here, and they are a few moves away from, I think, hopefully graduating to that top level of team that we just never really saw them get to this year. But Dad, before we get into talking about the details in this game, let's just talk a little bit about injuries, because there were several in this game that just wanted to touch on. We did get some good news for Josh Myers, where it sounds like there's not any damage to his leg. Now, that was the really unfortunate one that I was especially worried about, because he is set to enter unrestricted free agency this year. It looked really bad. It happened with 2 minutes left in the game, too. He had to get carted off the field. The game's basically over. You're in desperation mode, and you look at it, it's like, damn, he could be out 9 months. I wasn't sure what happened.
Yeah, and it sounds like there's no damage. Obviously, it hurt, I'm sure, a bunch because it looked really painful, but it sounds like he's going to be good to go for free agency, which is just awesome for him because, he probably played himself to about that John Runyon level of contract, which is about $10 million, which is life-changing money. And if he had been hurt, that just kind of all goes out the window. He probably has to take a minimum 1-year deal. And so it's just good news for him. Also, some good news is that Jaden Reed, who had to leave this game with a shoulder injury, says that he does not expect that he will need any surgery on that. So, that's good as well. In terms of, other injuries in this game, unfortunately, the first, Romeo Doubs left with a concussion. That's 2 concussions in 2 months. That's obviously really concerning. Unclear, Matt LaFleur talked about it a bit today. He hasn't talked with the medical staff about it yet, but he said, obviously, there's always concern when you have a couple of concussions in quick succession. Hopefully it's not a long-term issue, but obviously something to, hope for the best for him and keep an eye on going forward. Also leaving this game were Elton Jenkins with a shoulder injury, Devontae Wyatt with a lower leg injury, Quay Walker with an ankle injury, and Josh Jacobs with, we're not even sure. We have no updates on any of them either. But yeah, it was
it was a slog. And the Packers didn't lose this game because of these injuries. They played terribly with all these players in as well. So, but obviously just hoping for the best for all those guys. But we do not have updates on any of them yet, unfortunately.
Yeah, it just felt like it made any chance of a comeback get like less and less likely as we were losing players.
There was like a series there where it was like a player every other snap. It was kind of ridiculous by the end. It just felt like, it was like, okay, we get it. It's going to be a bad week for us. You don't need to rub it in.
Okay.
Thank you, karma.
Right. Okay, you want to make sure we have no hopium left?
Exactly. But anyway, let's move on though, Dad, to just talking about this game. And let's start with our gut check. How'd this game make you feel?
I just watched this. Like, part of it was like, I just felt there were too many different things to overcome in the end, and they couldn't. They just were never able to elevate their level of play when they needed to. Or they had a tough opponent, and also during the game, it was like, of course that happened. That happened.
They fumbled the opening kick. Of course they did. They missed a 38-yard field goal.
They spent all this time talking about, of course, we want to get off to a good start, play clean, mistake-free football.
Yeah. I mean, that was
Let's get up to a fast start, and we don't even get the ball on offense on their first chance.
Yeah, we might as well have just like accidentally said kick and not defer and just been like, yeah, we're kicking both halves. Like, might as well. At least then they would have had worse field position on the opening drive.
And then, of course, it was like that play. That play shouldn't have been a fumble to begin with.
Well, it was a fumble, but we definitely recovered. I mean, I have no idea what they were looking at.
It was like
helmet. Yeah.
Helmet, the crown of the helmet. I mean, he lowers his head and it's like that's crown of the helmet to the face mask. How is that not a penalty?
I don't know. And Keyshawn Nixon was saying the same thing after the game, but also, just don't.
It just bothered me that the announcers totally ignored that aspect of it.
Tom Brady on the call, who's one of the worst play-by-play guys, or not one of the worst color commentary
guys. At least
guys
mention the
NFL.
fact that
so terrible.
Yeah, he took the crown of the helmet right into his face.
Yeah, I don't know how this guy finessed being paid what it was at $30 million a year by Fox, and he doesn't have to go to any meetings or know anything about either of the teams. What a finesse job. What a fantastic
all
job.
Sports they all do this.
Yeah, it is.
They want a big name person in the booth, and they sign player after X player in all kinds of sports to do this. They don't care if they're good at the job.
Yeah.
They just care that people will recognize them when they show up and will tune in because, I know that guy.
Yeah, and
that's all they care about.
Really indicative of like replacing Greg Olsen, who was fantastic at it, with Tom Brady.
They take the people who are good,
and
replace them with somebody who's famous and unqualified.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this is. Can I make a comment that this is just the state of America?
That's everything. Yes, exactly. But
it's not just. This isn't just sports.
Yeah, but my gut check for this game was just like, this was a microcosm of Green Bay's season. Like this is exactly how they played in every big game. They started slow in this game. They've started slow in every big game. They make countless errors, whether it's penalties or turnovers. They did that in every big game. They have a bunch of special teams mistakes. That's kind of par for the course.
It seemed like special teams had gotten better for a while.
Yep, and then suddenly,
just reared its.
But you knew though. You were holding your breath. Like let's be honest. But
this reminds me of, I knew even though I was happy, it was just an illusion.
Yeah, when Harry met Sally, I was like, I knew she was just going to kick me in the
one day
or something
it would kick the bleep out of me.
Yeah, exactly. But it was just kind of this is how the Packers season went. We kept waiting for them to get out of third or fourth gear. We kept waiting for them to hit that ceiling, kept waiting for them to hit their stride, kept waiting for them to peak at the right moment, and they just never did. Even in their wins, they were like unconvincing and bit stop and start. And so it's hard to really say that this game wasn't, in some ways expected. Now, did you have some hope that maybe they would be able to play a cleaner game than they did? Yes, but for a lot of the season, they didn't. So it's like, there's not too much to say. Now, in terms of broader, how players played, I mean, I don't really have any questions about Jordan Love's the quarterback for this team going forward. Does he need to play better? Yes. I would say this is like a C- game for him. I've seen some people say it was like an F. Not in my opinion, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then for Matt LaFleur, a rough end to the season, but I don't think that outweighs all the good that he's done as a coach of the team. Are there things he needs to get better at? Yes. Does he need to have the team better prepared in these big games? Yes. Does some of the passing game need revamping? Yes, 100%. But there's still so much more good than bad that I'm still confident in him and Love as like
core of this offense going forward. And I'm still really excited for 2025, like I mentioned. But Dad, let's start talking about this game a little bit more in detail. Biggest moment of the game was when the Eagles converted 4th and 1 on a 3-yard run for Hurts near midfield with 13:40 left. Raised the Eagles' win likelihood from 74.3% to 82.3%, which was an 8% swing. That was the biggest play of the game. We always go by ESPN win probability there. And, you probably could, I would have said it probably happened earlier in the game. I would say the biggest play of the game was definitely that Keyshawn Nixon fumble, but
I would have thought so too. But, I guess the earliest I can see is had the Eagles with a pretty decent win percentage at the start. And so that changed it a little bit, but wasn't as big as that was a weird blip though. In that, I guess it was fourth quarter, it went up towards Green Bay when they stopped them on 3rd, and then a sharp back down. So there's this funny little one play peak towards Green Bay's favor before it went back down to.
Yeah, and I mean, but at this point, just to remind people of what that play was, it was 4th and 1 at the Philadelphia 49 with 13 minutes left, and it was 16-10. If you get a stop there, you have the ball at midfield with a touchdown to take the lead. Yeah, that's why it was such a big swing, and unfortunately they were not able to get the stop. And unfortunately for the defense, we'll talk about them later. Let's start with the offense though, Dad. There are some positives, there are some negatives. It wasn't all bad. It was a lot of bad. Anytime you only put up 10 points, it's not great. Anytime you turn the ball over 3 times, it's not great. But I guess let's start with the negatives, because that is, more to do with how the offense went. I think it's, there were more negatives than positives. What was your first, negative takeaway from the offensive side?
We're going to go with the negatives. Okay.
We'll go negatives first. I just think it's, there were more negatives than positives. So let's start with the negatives.
I'll give one, because then one of them I have is actually continuing on one of yours. So I won't jump ahead on that one, but another slow start. So Green Bay had the second lowest first quarter EPA per play, according to RBSDM, and the third lowest EPA per play in the first half. So second lowest in the first quarter, third lowest for the whole first half of all wildcard teams on the week.
Yeah.
This follows up on being 29th out of 32 in the first quarter in the last 2 weeks of the regular season. To me, this seems like a coaching problem more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, opening
slow starts and
yeah,
and really when we have can't count the Bears in there, but the tough opponents, we got bad starts, like 6 out of 6. 6 out of 6?
Mm-hmm. It feels like every single one. I mean, you just look.
We almost had a good start in week 1, but we couldn't convert.
Yeah, week 1 I would say is the closest to a good start you had in a big game, but you just stall out.
We got the 2 turnovers, but we
times.
couldn't punch them in.
Yeah, stall out in the red zone too many times week 1. First game against the Vikings, you fall down 28-0 really quickly. First game against the Lions, you stall out in the red zone there as well. And then also you have a bunch of turnovers. And also in the Vikings game, you have a bunch of turnovers. Second game against the Lions, you fall down into a hole kind of quickly. Second game is against the Vikings. You don't really do anything on offense until the fourth quarter. And then in this game, you score 0 points in the first half. I mean, that's just not going to get it done. But yeah, I think it does have to do a lot with the coaching. And like I said, I still have faith in Matt LaFleur long-term, but I just think, over the last 3 weeks, this has been some of his worst work as the head coach and play caller of the Green Bay Packers. I think they need to revisit what they're doing. It just seemed like they came out unconfident and unprepared. And, just to highlight one thing that really, I think, accentuates that is what the absolute, what were we doing with left guard? Here's the situation. Elton Jenkins gets injured early in the game. Obviously, that sucks. That sucks for Elton. That sucks for the team. He's probably your best or second best offensive lineman. He's key to a lot of what you do inside, like in terms of the inside running game. That's awful. You have to have a plan. And for some reason, the plan was you put in Travis Glover at left guard, who is 1, a rookie, 2, a 6th round pick, 3, naturally a left tackle, 4, has never played a snap at left guard this season, and 5, has played 13 total snaps in just the San Francisco game garbage time and the New Orleans game garbage time, which were both mop-up duty and blowouts where you're practically just kneeling the ball out. You don't put in Kadeem Telford, who is, in his second year, has played some left guard and has played in actual real game action. Week 14 versus Detroit, when Sean Ryan had to leave the game a bit with a stinger, he actually played in a real game that mattered. And so you go with Glover, who lasts 23 snaps, commits 3 penalties, essentially tanks a drive by himself. And after those 23 snaps, you bench him for Telford.
Telford isn't great, but he's better than Glover was. And so what was the plan? Why was the plan Glover? You just seem totally unprepared for any kind like that. That I think just highlights the fact that you weren't prepared. You need to have a plan for, hey, if we lose alignment in this game, who are we going to go with? The plan was bad, or it seemed, and the plan didn't make sense. And then the plan didn't work, and then you pivoted off of it almost instantaneously. So it shows a lack of preparedness and a lack of conviction in your own decisions. I mean, at least they didn't keep trying to do the same thing over and over again.
I was going to say, I'm glad they didn't have conviction in that first decision.
Yeah, but I think that just highlights the fact that they seemed unprepared and unconfident. And then in terms of the lack of confidence, I mean, this happens, I think, too much for LaFleur coach teams, and I think he needs to take a long, hard look on why. As soon as that Keyshawn fumble happened, I mean, we all kind of knew how the game was going to go, right? Like, as soon as that happened, it felt like we were going to be, too often when something happens like that, we just cascade and let it just trick. Like, there's no, like, okay, let's regroup. It seemed like that play just totally shattered everyone's confidence. For the rest of the game, everyone played tight. No one was loose. No one was, I think this was like, it sounds silly, but I think it does matter. And I think, I can't remember who it was, but I think it was Andy Herman, was like, no one's having fun out there. That's like I think that does matter. You don't feel any kind of excitement. Tight. You don't feel any kind of positive energy from the offense for the whole course of the game. And you just feel tight. And so that's where I think a lack of confidence and a lack of just regathering the troops comes into play. You don't seem, prepared, which is like I just highlighted by the whatever the hell was going on with that offensive line rotation there. And I think that was the biggest negative on the offensive side of the football for me is that. And I just don't know why you went with Glover there and not Telford. But yeah, tough. Yeah, well, it wasn't good. And then, to just build off of, Telford playing, I mean, the offensive line was really bad in this game. They allowed 9 different quick pressures. The overall pressure rate wasn't terrible, but when they gave up pressure, it was almost instantaneous. Zach Tom played probably the worst game I've seen him play as a pro. He was getting destroyed by Nolan Smith. An average time to pressure on their 11 pressures of 2.28 seconds. That is insane. For reference, the league leader is 2.52, and the gap between 2.28 and 2.52 is as big as the gap between the first-ranked pass rush and the 26th ranked pass rush.
26.
They were getting to Love almost instantly when they were getting to him. Just really bad in terms of pass blocking. And then for the run blocking, 0.08 yards before contact per attempt. They were getting hit at the line on almost every single run. The league worst is 0.9. Like you were the equivalent of one of the worst pass blocking and worst run blocking units in the league in this game. I know the pressure rate overall is fine, but when you lost almost instantaneously. And I mean, Zach Tom didn't even touch Nolan Smith on one of those sacks on big third down. It was just really poor from the offensive line, and I get that you're playing with a backup out there, but there are plenty of teams playing with backups out there. There are worse things than having a backup left guard in. It just wasn't good enough from the line in this one.
Yeah, and just to go on to that, yeah, so they gave up the fastest time to pressure in the week, faster than any team's season average. In week 1 against Philadelphia, it was 2.98, which was the 6th slowest. Mm-hmm. And just look at their other top opponents against Minnesota for the 2 games they played against. So they gave up 2.6 time to pressure of 2.68, which was the 3rd slowest for Minnesota. And then against Detroit, they gave up time to pressure of 3.32 seconds, which was the 2nd slowest of any Detroit opponent. So they had done okay in other tough matchups.
Yeah.
They got off to a bad start, and then losing Jenkins, who is the 2nd highest graded pass blocker amongst interior offensive linemen, something like that, for the season.
Yeah. It's tough, but you have to be able to overcome these things, and that's another instance of failure to overcome adversity. You have to do that if you want to be a championship level team. You see plenty of other teams deal with, losing guys, and it can't just totally sink your entire offense because you lose a guard. Like, that's going to happen. It's going to happen over the course of the year. You see other teams overcome way more injuries than what the Packers have. And by the end of the game, the Packers were like at the point where it's like, okay, this is too many to overcome. But when you when you lose a guard initially, it shouldn't just be one guy is out and just like the line collapses. Like,
for the season, they had 5 offensive linemen play more than 1,000 snaps.
Yeah, they had like one of the healthiest offensive lines in the league. And sure, once Elton goes out, man, you wish you had Morgan. Like, goodness, you wish you had Jordan Morgan there, but you don't. And that's going to happen. You just have to be able to game plan around it.
And part of that is, having a plan in place that is not a terrible plan, like having Glover go in. This is not to take shots at Travis Glover. I don't think it's fair to assume a 6th round rookie left tackle is going to be ready to play in a playoff game against the best defensive line in the league at a position he has never played before. A position he has never played before.
He didn't play that in college either.
I can't remember. He might have played a few.
Maybe he played around. Maybe he moved around a little bit.
Yeah, but like a position he hasn't played in years. So, like, at least. So, yeah, no, it was just a bad plan. In terms of other things that were negative, let's talk a little bit about Jordan Love's day. Like I mentioned, I thought it was a C- day from Love. I don't think he played well enough. He needs to play better. I've seen some people say that he was like disastrous, or he was the weak link, or he was dreadful. That was not how I felt about the game. Overall, the 3 picks, you can't turn the ball over 3 times and expect to win. But I think the first pick, I'm just going to hat tip Darius Slay. I mean, what a fantastic play by him. I didn't have any problem with taking a shot there. I didn't have any problem with the placement that much. I mean, maybe it's a little bit inside, but you put it much further, it's just going to be an incompletion. I think you could argue Wicks needs to do a little bit better of a job stacking Slay, getting on top of Slay so Slay's not able to undercut that one. But so the first pick, I would say is mostly just a really good play by the defense. The second pick I thought was bad. It was really bad. Now, Matt LaFleur did say today that part of the reason for that second pick is that Malik Heath ran his route at the wrong depth. He's supposed to run it at 20 yards, not 15 yards. And if Malik Heath runs it at 20 yards, he's less further inside at the end of that route. And that, Matt LaFleur said, I saw what Jordan saw in that play. I think that would have been open if we had the right route depth ran there. I still don't think you can throw that ball once you see where the linebacker is. And that was just a gift. It seemed like he just never saw Zach Bond. So I'm not giving Jordan Love a pass on that second pick. I think that one was the one that was like the most like, okay, like that one can't happen. That really can't happen, especially driving at the end of the first half when you're trying to, get back into the game. That can't happen. That was the one where I was like, oh, come on, man. You got to be able to see the linebacker there in the robber role. And he's had a couple of those, last year with Spillane against the Raiders who undercut it. Against the Vikings earlier this year, I believe there was one that was similar. That's something he needs to get better at, is making sure that underneath guy doesn't have eyes on him and isn't ready to jump that pass. And then the third one, I mean, it was pass interference and it was the end of the game. They were throwing up a prayer. So
yeah, it was throwing up a prayer, but the linebacker, it was Zach Bond, right?
Yeah.
Just runs right through Bo Melton. And just drags him out of the play.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you say, the refs can say, oh, he didn't have a chance to catch the ball. Yeah, because
he's getting tackled.
Just bulldozed him out of the field.
Yeah, so I will say, I think that the second pick is the one that I think can't happen. Even with Matt LaFleur's explanation, I still don't think you can throw that ball once you realize where the linebacker is. The first and the third, I think they are what they are. Overall, in the day, the Packers had a dropback success rate of 43.9%, which is not good, but it is better than what the Eagles allow in the season, which is 41.5%. I think that, this is a defense that was specifically designed to stop what the Packers are good at in terms of passing, in terms of they really limit explosive plays. It's really hard to hit explosive plays on them. You have to kind of nickel and dime them, a little bit at a time. And we've seen throughout the year, the Packers passing game has not been good at that. And I think that is something going forward that the Packers need to do better at. I think they fell in love with the deep ball a little too much this year. And, we're not able to play in different styles when the situation required it. But overall in the day, Love has to be better. The play calling has to be better. I thought it was a C- day from Love. I thought he definitely needs to be better, but I didn't think it was like all on him by any means. Does he need to improve? Yes, but I thought he did a good job avoiding sacks in this one as well. Not a great day from him, not even a good day from him, but I still feel fine. I still feel better than fine about him actually, going forward as the quarterback of this team. I see some people being like, oh, I can't believe what a mistake. We paid him $55 million. There are still 20 teams in the league that would gladly take Jordan Love, even at this money. And I don't have a doubt in my mind about that. I'm still really confident in him going forward. But yeah, it's still, you can't win a game when you have 3 turnovers. So, I mean, that's still a negative.
Yeah. And I think they had to, we came into this game thinking, okay, we can't really live on the deep ball on explosive plays because we're missing our most explosive player, the player who led the team in explosive plays. And it's what Philly is best at.
Yeah.
So the game plan should have been completely different. Like maybe 1 or 2 to keep them honest.
And they tried to do it. They had a pretty, a better dropback success rate than the Eagles usually allow. But, credit to Philly's defense as well. But yeah, I think, this is the kind of thing that's been a problem for the passing game all year, though, is that they have not been good enough down to down.
which is something that they're going to need to work on in the offseason. And because I think, they fell in love with like a little bit too much, just trying to hit explosive plays and getting down to down.
Not enough moving the chains.
They were like, it seemed like, we're going to use the run game as our down to down consistency, and then we're going to hit big shots with the passing game, and that's going to be the offense. They never had like any kind of pivot.
Raiders or whatever. We're going to run the ball and then just
throw some bombs,
fire down some bombs,
which worked for a good stretch of the season. But then when teams started to drop their linebackers a little bit further back and take away a lot of those deep crossers, you just they never found anything in the quick passing game, which is I think something they're going to need to work on. But like I said,
it really didn't work with teams with good defensive fronts against us, where
they were
pressure. We're get pressure. Taking too much time to throw.
But like I said, I still feel very confident in Love going forward as the quarterback of this team. And like I said, still 20 teams that would, take him in a heartbeat. But Dad, any other negatives on the offensive side of the ball? Or should we talk about a couple of positives? Because there were a couple of positives.
Let's get to the positives.
Okay, the first thing I wanted to touch on is, like I mentioned, Love overall, not a great day. But under pressure, he was pretty good. He was pressured 11 times, took 2 sacks, and he was 7 of 9 for 100 yards with 0.31 EPA per dropback when pressured. That was second in the league in EPA per dropback under pressure this week. Only Josh Allen was better. So he was quite good when he was pressured. And like we already talked about, almost every single one of those pressures was quick pressures. Like he was getting like practically lit up instantly. Like we already talked about, that 2.28 time to pressure is better than the best in the league. And the gap between that and the first one is as big as the gap between first and 26th. So despite getting pressured really quickly, he was still very good under pressure. And then the other positive I had is, they were really good on third down in this one, which was kind of surprising me. 7 of 13 on third down against one of the best, defenses in the league. Not bad at all. But Dad, what positives? And I'm not going to go any further because like it feels like putting lipstick on a pig at that point. It's like you scored 10 points. Like it's no one. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say it was a good day on offense. But I think there were still some positives. But Dad, any other positives on offense?
Did they? So is this one of Love's better games against pressure? Because I know he had, overall his numbers for the season weren't so great under pressure.
That's a good question. I have to double check that. But I mean, it's hard to be a whole lot better than 0.3 EPA per dropback under pressure. Like that's pretty dang good.
So what I had for good things is a lot of it's focused on the running game. Versus Josh Jacobs gained over 100 yards from scrimmage, 81 rushing yards on 4.5 per carry, which was 0.2 yards per carry more than Philly's average on defense. And he also had another 40 yards on 3 receptions.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those games for him where it's like, oh, well, if you take away that 31-yard run, he really only had 17 carries for 50. This is one of those you got to watch the game. Like, we already talked about, they were getting hit at the line. Like, yards before contact was about 0. Like, he was having to create everything.
Yeah, so he had the one big play, but also his success rate of 44.4% was better than Philly gives up on average of 37.1%.
Yeah, 44%.
So he was getting some
good.
Down-to-down success against a really tough front.
Yeah, and I mean that 31-yard play, like the 31-yard run
that was my favorite play of the game. I do like some good running back plays,
and just to like, and obviously the play itself like was fantastic. I mean, he's dragging like 7 guys with him, but not just that. I think it indicates some intangibles there as well, where it's like, I am not gonna let us go down like this. We are going to get a touchdown here no matter what. Like, we need to score, and I am going to make it happen. And I love Josh Jacobs. I'm really excited for him going forward.
Yeah, I mean, that was the play that got us, with a little bit of hope in the game. We're okay. We're in it. We got a chance. He's like, and he had to create so much of that run on his own.
He had to create so much of almost every run he had on his own. Yeah. Like, it was so much just Josh Jacobs, break tackle, like duck, dive, dip, Dutch. What is it? Dodge, duck, dive, dip, and dodge. Yeah, something like that. But yeah, I mean, dodge a wrench.
Somebody like throwing wrenches at him for practice.
Oh man, we gotta start tossing wrenches to our receivers and see if they can catch him. But anyway, no, yeah, he was so good in this game.
Yeah, and as a team, they were second on the wildcard weekend with 4.24 yards after contact per carry. That would have been good enough to lead the regular season by more than half a yard, and is like 0.86 more yak per attempt than they got on the season, and 1.2 yards more yards after contact per attempt than Philly gives up on the season.
Yeah.
So they were really working, grinding, play to play.
Yeah.
The other thing they had is the Packers seem to have found something in the Kraft push,
Kraft sneak,
Kraft squeeze, Kraft
I like
press.
I like the cheese squeeze.
I know cheese squeeze, but you also get the Kraft cheese squeeze.
Well,
where this needs to be workshopped. What we're going to call this, but it has a very high success rate. In fact, I think it's 5 for 5 on the season.
I don't think it's failed. Yeah,
I think it's 100%.
Well, at one point it was like, is that our longest play of the game? Like, did we just get like 9 yards
got,
on that?
Yards off
No, we got like one where he like carried it like.
They kept going for like 7 or 8 yards.
Yeah, I mean his long carry of the day was 8, which I was like, is this the best? Is this the best carry we're gonna have all day? But no, yeah, Matt LaFleur said in his presser today that one of the things they're going to focus on this offseason is highlighting him more in the passing game and trying to use him more.
Good.
I know.
I've been calling out for this for a few weeks now.
Yeah, and
feature him like as run the offense that Kansas City has done for years with Kelsey.
Yeah, the issue that Matt LaFleur was like, we obviously want to use him more. That's something we're going to highlight going forward. He said at times it's difficult because, when you get into those 6-man protections and you want to give a guy some help, usually that's a tight end. So usually that's Kraft, unless you're in like 12 personnel and then you can use a different tight end or you can use the back. But usually when you're chipping or helping in a max protect, you have to use your tight end. And he's like, that's something we're going to, talk about over the offseason is how to get Kraft, more highlighted in the offense.
Figured out.
But no, yeah, Kraft is definitely one of their best players on offense. Anything else that you wanted to highlight in terms of...
Those are the good things that I had on offense.
Yeah, the other thing I just wanted to highlight is before he got hurt, I thought, I already talked about Jacobs having that, never say die mentality, which I really appreciated because it felt like they needed someone to bring some life. The other guy who did that, though, was Jaden Reed. They had nothing going, and then he had that big punt return. He had one play where, he broke like 5 tackles, trying to get, every single last inch. And I think you got to find a way to get him the ball more. And I know we've talked about it all season. He needs to play better too. Like he needs to catch the ball more. That would be handy. But I think, he just maybe he's not, your number one guy. I still think, going into this offseason, I think you need to wonder about whether or not they need to bring in a number one guy. And I think that was kind of my big takeaway just as the season unfolded, which felt like the gap between the Packers and the teams ahead of them in the standings is you just feel a few stars short. The Packers, I feel like, have a lot of B and B plus level players, but not as many A level players as these top teams. And I think specifically on offense in the passing game, you just need a player that opposing teams have to worry about over the course of the week in their game planning. Like it seems like there's not anyone in the passing game where the opposing defense there's no one in the passing game that has a lot of gravity, I guess is how I would say it. Like no one in the passing game where it's like, oh, like we need to be doubling this guy. Oh, like we can't leave this guy one-on-one. Like we saw at the end of the year, like teams would just play man coverage against Green Bay because they didn't really need to respect any individual guy. And it was a very tough time for Green Bay to get anything going in the passing game in those looks. And so I think you're a star short on offense. And I think also you're a star short on defense, but we'll talk about that later. But Dad, with that being said, Devontae Adams reunion? Question mark? I wouldn't hate it.
This is people say you're a bucket getter. And as you mentioned, it's like how we performed against press man. We really struggled when teams and teams weren't respecting us. I think that was the line saying like, we just probably could man up. Yeah. And then send the house.
I mean, when you look at this team, if you're an opposing defense, like who are the skill players that you need to worry about, really? Like there's no one where it's like, oh wow, like if we like don't stop this guy, we're just gonna get crushed. Like it's Jacobs, like in terms of skill position guys. And in terms of pass catchers, there's no one where it's like, oh man, like that guy's going to be a problem for us for the whole game. Now, maybe Reed, maybe Kraft, maybe, some of these other guys can develop, but especially now with questions about, Watson, when he's going to be back next year, might end up missing most of the year. Dobbs now with 2 concussions in a couple of months. I think we're going to be looking at receiver this offseason, definitely, but we'll have a lot of time to talk about the offseason. Dad, anything else on the offensive side of the football that you wanted to touch on? Any other player that you wanted to highlight? What else did you want to talk about there? Anything?
Well, I kind of mentioned a little bit already about the things that made us think in terms of we had 5 offensive linemen play 1,000 snaps. And I feel like our depth on the offensive line is not as good as it was a couple of years ago. I mean, this year, our 6th and 7th snap getters were Morgan and Telfort. In 2023, it was Nyman and Ryan. In 2022, it was Zach Tom and Royce Newman. And in 2021, it was Royce Newman and Kelly.
Yeah. And, it's tough because it's like, how many teams really have that much good offensive line depth? Like, it's not common in the NFL to have.
Yeah, we may have been a little spoiled by a few years of having good backups.
Yeah.
But it just, we either didn't have, we weren't experienced enough for sure.
Mm-hmm.
The guys that we ended up using.
And I think even this year, though, if you told, like, at the start of the year, most teams would take, like, hey, your first round rookie is your first guy off the bench on the offensive line. Like, that's not bad.
But then he only ended up playing a few games.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we were down to
Telfort
and Glover.
And then when Myers gets hurt, you have Jacob Monk snapping with Jordan Love as we cut to commercial. You come out of commercial and it's like, actually, they're going with Sean Ryan at center. Once again, what is the plan? Where is the plan? Like, was there a plan? Do we have any kind of contingency plans for the offensive line? It seems like with the Glover-Telfort decision, with the, like, having Monk practice snapping with Love as we go to break, and then we come out of break, and it's like, oh, they're actually not doing that.
I think that
what are we doing?
They had been using Ryan, snapping when they needed to.
And then Ryan immediately snaps it into his own ass, and they have a fumble.
That was the universe. It was like Final Destination. You're not avoiding this problem, no matter what you do.
Yeah. There must have been something where it's like, okay, these Monk snaps are not good. Like, this is bad.
Yeah,
like,
and I think the problem was with Jenkins already out.
Yeah.
Then we don't want to lose another guard.
Yeah, although when he was playing center, Jenkins, I mean, his snaps weren't good either. So how
no, I didn't. No, I mean,
you meant okay.
I meant that you didn't want to pull another guard out of the starting lineup. We were already down to our third guard, or if you want to say, third guard available. With Jenkins out when he had to put Telford in. And now if you move another...
But that's what they ended up doing.
The options weren't good.
No, that's true.
But I think that's why they avoided Ryan at first and tried Monk is like, oh, those snaps during commercial break must not have been good.
Must not have been. It must have been really bad. But anyway, that's kind of all we have for the offensive side. Let's move over to the defensive side. A lot of this is going to be nitpicking because you hold the team to 22 points, with 7 of those being off of a fumble at your own, 20-yard line. It's hard to really be that, mad at the defense in this one. Overall, I thought they played a really good game, Dad.
Yeah, they really held up and kept us in the game for a long time. I think that with the first possession, I think they just weren't quite ready.
Yeah.
That was one of the worst possessions of the game. But after that, they really shut down the Eagles for a while. And then I think at the end, you say, well, they maybe just ran out of gas, having to carry so much.
In some ways, it's like, that's also a bit of a microcosm of the season. The defense in a lot of these games has started well, and then as the game has gone on, has gotten worn down. And then when you really need a stop, isn't able to get it. But at the same time,
should we go bad first and then end on good? Since it's the last game of the season?
Let's go bad first. I mean, like I mentioned, it's kind of it's once again something that was a problem this season. And it is nitpicking because, the defense was not the issue in this game. For the most part, they played great. They had one stretch where it was like 4 straight drives and they allowed 9 total yards. I mean, hard to be too mad about that. But once again, like in a lot of these big games, you can't get a stop when you need it. It's 16-10. There's 14:56 left in the fourth quarter. You have if you get the ball back, you're only down 6 points. You get a touchdown to take the lead. You get a field goal to get within 3 points. And it's a 13-play, 58-yard, 7-minute and 23-second drive. And you only force 2 third downs in that span, in those 13 plays. And one of them they convert, and then the other one they, it's a 3rd and 1. They take a shot play, and then they 4th and 1 tush push. So you aren't even getting them to third down on that final drive.
That's kind of disrespectful that going for a bomb on 3rd and 1 because we'll get the tush push anyway.
That's the thing though. I love that play call. I think that's exactly
what it was a smart play call. Yeah. But they just have so much confidence in the tush push there.
I mean, how can we
can waste a play on 3rd and 1.
Yeah, but I would want Green Bay to do the same thing. That's what I would want us to do. Overall in the season, I think Green Bay had the second lowest rate of going for it on 4th downs when you're supposed to go for it. It was within a score is with a win probability swing of at least 1% and within this much percent chance of winning and with this much time left in the game,
the Packers had like the second lowest rate in the league ahead of only, I can't remember who it was, but they need to be more aggressive on fourth down. So I wish they Packers did more stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, that was my really only negative and something that's plagued this team all year is once again, you can't get the stop when you really need to. And I just want to circle that back to, once again, I think you're lacking a star. I think you're lacking playmakers. Right now, who's the guy on defense that opposing teams need to worry about? There's not
McKinney.
really, it's McKinney, but it's kind of easy to game plan around safeties in a lot of ways. Like you can avoid one side of the field. You can just nickel and dime underneath where that safety is playing. There's no one on the defensive line that opposing teams need to worry about. There's no playmakers along the defensive line. Now you hope Gary could be that. He's had a down year. Hopefully he can bounce back next year and with another year under his belt in this scheme. You thought it would be Kenny. Kenny's had a really disappointing year, especially after you extended him this offseason. Wyatt hasn't taken that next step. Carl Brooks didn't take that next step. Lucas Van Ness, I mean, if we're calling it like it is, he's looking like a bust so far. You go down the list and just, I mean, your best pass rusher was Brenton Cox probably this season. Like, if we're being honest. And so there's no one on the defensive line.
Amongst edge rushers, he had the
highest pressure rate.
Highest pressure rate in the regular season.
Yeah. And so you go in along the defensive line, and again, I think you're a star short. You look at some of these other great teams, and they have individual guys that offenses need to take the whole week to game plan around, and that are like focal points, they're gravity. They're like, hey, if we get this guy a one-on-one, he's going to win most of the time. And the Packers are just lacking in the star department. They have a lot of B plus level players, again, on defense. They have that on offense as well, but no A level players where it's like, this guy can take over a game. This guy can get a stop when you really need it. This guy can get a sack, get a pressure, force an errant pass when you really need it. And I think that that's kind of, part of the problem with why they can't get stops when they really need stops at the end of these games.
Yeah, I agree. They need another star. Maybe the Raiders don't want Max Crosby anymore.
Well, I don't know if you saw that. Did you see the Josh Jacobs quote after the game that everyone's retweeting?
I'm gonna get some guys. I'm gonna bring some guys here. Get some guys.
I mean, hey, if you wanted to bring Max Crosby, I'll trade 2 firsts for Max Crosby 100% of the time and twice on Sundays. That would be totally worth it. That'd be exactly what this defense needs. Because the thing is, we'll have plenty of time to talk about this. We need to talk about this right now,
that's more of an off-season conversation.
Exactly. But anyway, defensive side, any negatives that you wanted to touch on?
So they gave up the third most yards before contact per attempt on the week against the run at 2.01. Which is a full yard more than their regular season average of 1, which was the third fewest yards before contact per attempt on the season amongst all teams. However, it still was slightly below the Eagles' season average of 2.17. So it's like, I don't want to ding them too much for giving it more than they usually do, because it's still better than what the Eagles are generally getting.
I mean, considering the competition you're going against, where you're going against, in my opinion, the best offensive line in the league, and the fact that the defensive line, we're looking at, based on the level of expectations we had for our defensive line, I can't be too mad about how the D-line played in this game, to be honest. Like, they held up better than I thought they would in the running game. I mean, besides the, play at the end where Saquon slides and, like, could have taken it to the house, for the most part, they kind of kept him in check, at least a little bit,
Yeah, for the most part, they did. That last play was like, what do you... They're like a play away from kneeling it out by that point when Saquon
I mean, you're
slides.
just trying to force a negative play, and then you bring the house and you can't quite get it. The other thing is, like, that. I mean, the thing is, it is just nitpicking on the defensive side when I'm looking at negatives. Like, I'm looking at Carrington Valentine not getting Dallas Goedert on the ground there. It's tough, but hey, just grab him and fall over. Like, at that point, don't just let him stiff arm you 20 yards down the field, and just grab his arm and fall. And I did think actually that, we talked about coming into this game that the blitzes weren't very good. I thought the blitzes in this game were better. Now that Goddard touchdown was also on a blitz, but I think that they called them at good times and got pressure with those. I thought Quay Walker played really good in this game on first glance. Overall, I thought for the most part, the Packers played well, on defense. You go into this game with, not the corners that you probably were hoping you would have coming into the season. Yeah. And you limit Devontae Smith to 4 catches, 55 yards, and A.J. Brown 1 catch, 10 yards. And so they combined for 65 yards on 7 targets. That's a whole lot better than the 190 you gave up the first time you played this team. So, I mean, it's tough.
We can talk about, should I go into more the specifics of good things?
I mean, there's a lot of positives from this defensive performance. For the most part, you held them down. and you give up 22 points. 7 of those weren't really your fault. It was a good defensive. It was a good enough defensive performance to win if the offense had shown up, and the offense didn't show up, and that was the major problem in this game. But yeah, let's talk about some of the positives. There are definitely a lot of positives on defense.
Yeah, I mean So should I go first?
Sure.
So I talk about like Keyshawn Nixon in coverage was pretty good actually. It depends on who you look a little bit, but according to NFL Pro, he had 24 coverage snaps and gave up no receptions on 3 targets. PFF gave him 1 reception on 4 targets in 26 snaps for 28 yards. But even by PFF's count, he still had the 19th fewest yards per coverage snap out of 41 cornerbacks and with at least 5 coverage snaps. Mm-hmm. And overall, the Green Bay cornerbacks finished like 5th out of 12 teams in fewest yards per coverage snap. So they were able to, hold up a bit in coverage against some good pass catchers. And then the other, you said you felt like Quay Walker had a good game. The coverage by the linebackers in this game, they were only their starting linebackers were only credited with 3 receptions for 17 yards in combined 52 coverage snaps. This was so as a unit, it's the 3rd fewest yards per linebacker coverage snap on the week out of 12 teams.
They played well. They played really well. I mean, you look at the overall numbers, it's hard to really fault the defense. You allow only 5.1 yards per play. That would be 4th best on the year for a defense. A 33.9% success rate overall allowed. That would be best on the year on the defense. You hold them to 2 of 11 on 3rd down. The defense played well enough to win.
Yeah. And then individually for the linebackers, Walker gave up no targets in 24 coverage snaps. Mm-hmm. Which, even though he gave up no targets and 0 yards, it still ended up finishing 3rd of the yard on the week in yards per coverage snap.
Yeah.
One of them was because some people gave up, a tackle for a loss. One of them was Nakobe Dean averaged negative yards per coverage snap. But Cooper only gave up 2 receptions and 13 yards and 21 coverage snaps. And McDuffie only gave up 1 catch for 4 yards and 17 coverage snaps.
Yeah, and part of it is that's not where Jalen Hurts likes to throw the ball. He doesn't like to throw it to the middle of the field. So you're just naturally, when you're playing against an offense like that doesn't really target the linebackers that much, you're not going to have many yards per coverage snaps. So that's an important, piece to keep in mind. But yeah, thought the linebackers played really good in this game, and it was nice to see, Walker and Cooper play together and play well together.
Yeah, they gave up the fewest passing yards on the week.
Yep. I mean, overall, it's a really good day. They did well in the pass defense. I have some stuff here on the run defense. Keeping in mind that the running game is what the Eagles want to do. They're one of the run heaviest teams in the league. They're one of the best running teams in the league. They're incredibly explosive as well. You hold them to just a 35.3% rushing success rate, which would be the equivalent of 30th in the league in terms of running offenses when they're 11th in that metric normally. You really don't let them pop a big one until the end there when you're kind of desperately trying to get a stop. The defense, I've said it a billion times, defense did enough to win. It's just exciting because this was going to be a test for Hafley where it's like, okay, specific game, week to game plan. What is your game plan specific defense looking like? And in my opinion, with an undermanned unit, he put together a really good game plan that got a lot of stops. And, we can talk about whether or not they got the stop that mattered at the end, but I think that's more to do with the roster than anything. And just not having, star players. But I think this is definitely a encouraging game from Hafley and that defensive coaching staff specifically. And at least gives you some hope for that unit in 2025 that, maybe add a couple more pieces that fit this defense a little bit better and you can take another step there. Anything else on the defense you wanted to highlight though?
I think that I was mostly talking about the coverage of this game, though there could have been more. Mm-hmm. But, they gave up, I think, Hurts had the 2nd lowest success rate on the week.
And they sniffed out the screens as well. Bullard had that really awesome tackle. I think it was on Smith got him by the legs on.
Over on their right side.
Yeah, early in the game.
I remember shouting out that play when it happened.
Yeah, and, you're able to get some pressures. You're getting some tackles for loss. The pressures you got were a little bit slow, but you win some of your one. Like it's a very good offensive line you're going against. So I think you need to look at it in that context. But yeah, it's a good day from the defense. Not much else I really wanted to touch on there. And I think, it's a young defense. It's exciting looking forward. I think you just need to beef up that defensive line more
and hopefully get like a star pass rusher there, which, easier said than done. But yeah. Anything else there? Should we move on to our favorite phase?
Well, I had a little bit of the things that made us think, so you talked about the pressure. They're fourth best in the week in pressure rate at 45.8%, but their time to pressure was third slowest in the week at 3.07.
Which is a common theme for Green Bay.
This is kind of what the Eagles do as well, though. This was a better pressure rate than Philly usually gives up, which is usually 50th highest in the league at 34.1. But the time to pressure was a little bit slower. Usually, Philly is the fifth slowest time to pressure at 2.84. So they give up pressures, but they're slow, but they do give them up. And so we were a little bit better in the pressure rate and a little bit slower in the time to pressure. So it's just, we were kind of doing to Philly what most teams end up doing in terms of, pass rush.
Yeah. And, it wasn't quite good enough, but it was still a solid day. But let's move on to special teams. I just have an ellipses, which is exactly what I had last week. My goodness, man.
Yikes.
What do we have to do? What ritual?
How many chickens need to be sacrificed
what
before,
do we need to
game?
Sacrifice? What do we need to do to have a playoff game without just special teams nightmares? We already talked about, opening kick, just dropping just immediate fumble. And then you miss a 38-yard field goal when McManus has never missed a field goal in the playoffs. I mean, what do we have to do? I think we're going to talk a lot about Bisaccia, and the special teams is better since he got here, but the bar was in the basement. Like, we're still like 22nd, which is better than 32nd with a bullet.
Are we that last? At what point, like going into the last game, I thought we were like middle of the pack, like 14th or 15th by DVOA.
Either. I mean, PFF thought we had a good day in special teams in this one.
I know. PFF. It's like, okay, listeners, how did PFF grade us for our best special teams performance on the season?
PFF
I don't understand.
Should always be taken with a grain of salt.
What are they weighting more than anything we would?
Okay, we'll talk to us about what went wrong with, because I already talked about the missed field goal. I mean, my goodness, what are we doing? I talked about the fumbled opening kickoff, which just hold on to the ball or just don't return it. Just don't even have a guy back there. And then the rest of the returns were terrible too, right?
Yeah. So the first one, the fumble on the opening eight, and we're trying to get a good start. But I also feel like we got hosed on that one. I mean, if we're being honest, even
don't fumble
the replay. Yeah, but also don't put it in harm's way. So just looking at starting field position after kickoffs. So it's taking out of the equation what their offense is doing. First kickoff, we got to the 27 and fumbled. Second kickoff, we returned to the 22nd, and that's as far as we get. But there's also penalties, so we end up starting at the 13. Then they kick it to the 6, and we get up to the 30 on that one with a return.
But they kick it to the 6.
They only kick it to the 6.
How are we only getting to the 30?
Then we get to the 22-yard line. We get to the 20-yard line, and then the last one's a touchback to the 30.
Yeah, we're returning all these kicks to the 20.
Yeah,
what are we doing? Number one, if it's in the end zone, take a damn touchback. What are you, like, stop? By the fourth return, Bisaccia needs to be yelling at Keyshawn Nixon to stop returning it out of the end zone. For the love of God, take a touchback.
I think for the season, we are well short of the 30.
It's really bad.
On average.
And then the coverage on the kicks that weren't in the end zone is terrible. I mean, the kick blocking, rather. Sorry, not the coverage. It's terrible, though. You're getting like 14 yards a return, 20 yards a return. You're getting it out to the 20. You're just giving up 10 yards every single time because you can't block anyone on kick returns. And
we did get one good punt return.
We did get one good punt return, and that was solid. But I mean, I just have to look at Bisaccia and be like, man, what do you do here? Like, what do you do here? What are you bringing to this team?
Office spacing. This one.
Yeah. What is it you would say?
What exactly is it you'd say you do here?
I mean, last week you get rope-a-doped on a punt return where your guys, no one even finds the ball in the air, and you look woefully unprepared. And then this week, it's a complete disaster again. Your special teams swings 10 points the wrong way. Number one, you give them a touchdown and then you miss a field goal. And then overall, over the course of the game, with all those kick returns that are short, that's like 10 yards. That's 10 yards a drive. Like you just
killing the team on special teams. It's just so disappointing. They just need to be better. They need to be better. But anything else on special teams that you want to talk about? I mean, meh.
Yeah, I don't know. Was there kick coverage or punt coverage good? I mean, is that what was good? I'm kind of grasping at straws here.
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, yeah, special teams was really bad. But yeah, tough loss for Green Bay as we wrap things up here. It's not great. Dad, who is your player of the game, though?
For me, it was pretty obvious. It's Josh Jacobs.
It's got to be Josh Jacobs.
During that touchdown run, he's like breaking all the tackles. He's getting down the one. I'm just yelling, Josh Jacobs is a bleep, 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 bleeping man.
Yeah, I mean, he at least had some fire in this game.
It was NSFW when I was yelling out at the TV that in a good way.
Yeah, positive,
excitedly,
positive swearing. But no, he was definitely the player of the game in my opinion as well. But Dad, let's just wrap things up here with a little bit of a looking forward, looking back. Tough season for Green Bay. Never really, like we mentioned, got out of third or fourth gear in any of these games, except maybe the Cardinals game, I guess. But hopefully, I'm still really excited for next year. I'm excited for this offseason. Like we mentioned, if you like what you hear here, stick around for the offseason. We'll be talking about, Senior Bowl, Combine, Draft, Free Agency, roster moves, et cetera, training camp, 53-man roster cutdowns, OTAs, rookie minicamp. Everything you need to know for the Packers offseason and team building. My favorite time of the year, honestly. We're just getting started. So we'll be here once a week over the course of the entire offseason. So make sure to check that out. But Dad, anything else that you wanted to say as the Packers 2024-2025 season comes to a close?
I feel like we can be better than this, and we should be next year. We don't need that many players to add. We need a couple
high-level
players. At the top. Maybe like two.
I think we need a star receiver and a star pass rusher, which is
Yeah.
hard to come by, but
Yeah.
you got to get it done.
But otherwise, just a little bit more attention to detail.
Yeah, that was a big thing this season. Was there was not enough attention to detail. But anyway, thank you again so much for listening. Hit that subscribe button, leave a review, whether Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Leave a comment. We would really appreciate it. Give us a follow on Twitter or Blue Sky at FatherSonPacker. Obviously, this loss stinks. Feels like the Packers season ended too early. But in a lot of ways, this is kind of how the season went. So it's hard to be too surprised, but obviously disappointing.
And this is always going to be a tough hill to climb in this week.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of set yourself up for a really too difficult road with, shortcomings in the regular season. It was going to be really hard to go on the road and beat Philly, then go on the road and beat Detroit, then et cetera down the line.
And apparently it was going to be hard to go on the road to Arizona to beat LA.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to the Rams. That was a heck of a performance yesterday as we record this on Tuesday. But yeah, I think still a lot to be excited for going into 2025. I'm really excited to see what this Green Bay Packers team does next. There's a good amount of work still to do. They need to clean up a lot. They need to make some key additions. But I think the bones of this team and the infrastructure are still really good. And the draft is going to be in Green Bay, so maybe that can give them a little extra luck. But anyway, thank you again so much.
Doesn't the hosting team get an extra first-round pick?
I mean,
for hosting
we
the draft.
Start doing that now. Why not? Just give us the first round.
I think we need to institute that new rule. As the host of the draft team, you get an extra first-round pick.
Why not?
We'll experiment with it for 1 year and see how it goes.
It's worth trying anything. But anyway, thank you again so much for listening. Like we said, we'll be here all off season, so make sure to check that out. And until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.